This is the exact blueprint you can follow to build your startup data stack in the next 30 days. I have helped more than 100 startups build and sometimes fix their data stacks while avoiding the common pitfalls that can topple your stack like Jenga blocks. I will break out the specific tasks and actions you have to take each week so that by the time day 30 arrives, your stack is ready to go. Let's get started with week 1, the right questions. Before you write any code or buy any tools, you need to figure out the right questions for your own startup. There's a story out there that when Facebook first started, people will come up to Mark Zuckerberg with lots of different ideas, and he will always ask them one single question in return. Will this idea help us grow? At this point in time, the complete focus of Facebook and Zuckerberg was to grow the user base. And if an idea was not related to that, it had to be shelved until a future date. This is the power of the right questions. It can help you figure out the right metrics for your startup right now. Here's 2 frameworks you can use to organize your questions and your metrics. Framework number 1 is the Pirate Metrics. This has been around since 2007, and it organizes your questions and metrics into 5 stages. You can then pick the stage that is most relevant to your startup right now and determine the 1 or 2 questions that need to be answered here. For example, you may choose activation, in which case your questions will revolve around the onboarding process after a user creates an account. Framework number 2 is the North Star metric. In this case, you choose one key metric for your company. For an early stage Spotify, this could have been the amount of time users spent listening to music. You then figure out input metrics that support your key metric, such as how to increase the time per session and how to bring back users more frequently on any given day or week. You then have even further input metrics that support the optimization of sessions and the optimization on how to bring users back. Either framework is fantastic, and you can look at videos online on how to properly use them. You can then figure out the most important questions and metrics for your startup at this point in time. Week 2, the right tools. Once you have your questions and metrics, you need the right tools to keep track of your progress. It's important to not think of individual tools here and instead think more of a system where data is going to flow continuously from one side to another. Let me show you one way to visualize the flow of data. Modern data stacks have sources on the left-hand side and destinations on the right-hand side. If you look at sources and we zoom in here, these are the locations where you can collect data. You're going to have, for example, your website or your web app. You'll have mobile apps, right? This, of course, can be iOS and Android, or TV apps. You may have backend data like your server. You may have a CRM. Most startups will have between 3 to 6 data sources when they start, and over time, you may add more data sources. Your data sources will then flow into destinations on the right-hand side. You can have tools for marketing attribution. This is the world of Google Analytics 4 on web, or AppsFlyer and Adjust on mobile. You can have product analytics. These are tools like Mixpanel, Amplitude, PostHog. You can have tools around communication. These are Braze, MailChimp, Customer.io. You may have sales data, which can be a CRM, such as Pipedrive, Salesforce, or HubSpot. And you may have tools that function across multiple categories. They may do product analytics and marketing attribution, and also be some kind of CRM. Depending on the questions and metrics you chose in week 1, you will now choose the necessary tools. If you're focused on acquisition, you need tools for marketing attribution, whether on web or on mobile. If you chose activation and retention, you will need tools around product analytics. The smaller you are, the more beneficial it is to go for an all-in-one tool. For example, you may have a tool like PostHog, which can do at least 4 or 5 of these categories. You may also ignore certain categories altogether. For example, you may not have enough traffic to do A/B testing. I have several videos in my channel where I dive deeper into specific tools, the most popular ones for startups. So check out those videos to understand how a specific tool might fit into your stack. It's also possible to have an optional step in the middle, which I call here the data abstraction and user model. These are usually customer data platforms, CDPs, and you have options like segment.com, RudderStack, High Touch, Census. Instead of having to do manual integrations with 5 different tools, you integrate one tool and save yourself some engineering time. The most common obstacle for startups is the pricing. So you can run a quick pricing model of what this might cost you. And if that makes sense within your financials, then it's usually a great choice. Finally, you want your tools to speak to each other as much as possible, which means that your sales data goes into some kind of data analysis tool, or your market attribution data flows into your user behavior. So look for tools that naturally integrate with the other tools that you're considering to build a cohesive data stack. Week 3, data implementation. You have the right questions, metrics, and the right tools. Now it is time to implement the data that will flow into your selected tools to answer your questions. This is often the most difficult part of the process, but here's a few guidelines to make it easier on your team. Before you write code, make sure you create a tracking plan. I have several templates in my channel you can download for free. Here's one for Mixpanel, but they all look very similar regardless of what tool you use. In that plan, you're going to have events, event properties, and user properties. An event like signup, which fires when the user creates an account, can then have event properties providing more details of this specific action. We may want to know what platform did this user create an account on? Was it mobile or desktop? The create date of when this occurred, first name and last name if your tool accepts PII, email and username as well. Down here, you may have an event called watch video, and then you have the same platform property, perhaps categories on the video ID, and so forth. If you want to use AI to help you build your tracking plan, I'm actually putting together a list of prompts I am using in my regular work with clients, and which you can access in the description below. You can see here that I have been playing around with a prompt that makes it easier to start your tracking plan, and then you can make some final edits on your own. So check that out. Once you have the key events that correspond to your questions and metrics, you need to choose where those events will come from. For example, we can see that this login event, we will need to track it on the web, on iOS, and Android. These will be our data sources. Depending on what tool you chose, they will offer something that's called an SDK, and the SDK aligns with the platform of your app, which could be JavaScript for web, Swift for iOS, or something else. The general guideline is that the client-side SDKs, that is the SDKs that run on web, on iOS, on Android, on the device itself, are generally faster to implement and easier, while backend SDKs, which may run on Ruby or Python, are harder to implement, but more reliable as they aren't susceptible to ad blockers. If you're unsure where to start, I recommend you start with client-side SDKs, as they will give you a lot of data out of the box, such as city, country, and region, or browser name or device name. And over time, you can layer in more backend events to increase your overall data reliability. Finally, your developers will take the tracking plan and convert it to that code-specific language. Here is an example from segment.com, the CDP we mentioned earlier. This is on the JavaScript or web SDK. You can see here that this is an event that's called article completed, and it has 2 properties: the title of the article and the course in which this article belongs to. Remember that client-side SDKs like this one will also collect at least 20 other properties behind the scenes, but we don't have to specify it in the code that we send to the tools that we chose. Properly thinking through your tracking plan to design the right events, properties, and user properties, and then choosing the right SDKs can save you a lot of headaches down the road by keeping your data clean and as accurate as possible. Week 4, building reports. You can now bring everything together from the first 3 weeks and build the reports and dashboards in the tools you selected. The goal here is to answer the questions all the way from week 1. Here's one example dashboard from Mixpanel that focuses more on the user acquisition. We can see that we have UTM data. This is the source data that tells us where users came from on web. We have funnels that then tell us user performance by the different sources, such as Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and a bunch of other charts. Here's a second example from Amplitude now that focuses more on product-related metrics around activation and retention. And we have funnel reports showing us drop-offs during the onboarding and several other charts that give us more information. And here's a third example. In this case, we're using a tool called Looker Data Studio that makes it easy to visualize data from tools like Google Analytics into different charts and reports. Many tools now have LLM capabilities where you can ask them to build a report for you. So you can just copy and paste the questions from week 1, and it will do its best to create the relevant report. Once you build your core reports once, you can then iterate over time as your questions become more nuanced and much more specific. And that is the 30-day blueprint to building your startup data stack. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to make other videos in the future answering them. I would also recommend that you check out this video that YouTube thinks will help you to continue to learn how to improve your startup's analytics and extract more insights from your data. My name is Ruben Ugarte, and I will see you in the next video.